I am Reverend Dr. Henry Lee Bates, and our Way to a Wonderful Life message for today is titled, Think Only the Best and Make Your Best Better. Think only the best and make your best better. You know, we've heard these words before. Think better, live better. How you think determines how you live. And this is the truth. This truth goes all the way back throughout history. It's a spiritual law that whatever we think, we become. And so many people, even though they want to deny it and they want to place blame somewhere else and where their life experience may be bringing them or what conditions they may be living under, that is the truth for all of us. It's a truth that we cannot escape any more than we can escape the fact that we must inhale air and oxygen into our lungs in order to live a physical life. These words of wisdom come from us because we know throughout history all the sages and the prophets of the Holy Bible and beyond have told us that thinking is the most powerful thing we do. But our thoughts are not separate and apart from our feelings. So we know that thinking is the most powerful thing we do, but what we hold in our heart, that is at the soul level of our being, determines the force of our thoughts and our life experiences. It is a practical impossibility to be fully conscious of every thought we have and to understand what it is creating in our life experience. However, we can become conscious of thought patterns that do create for us either negative or positive experiences, and we can change these thought patterns as we discover what we hold in our hearts. We can read in the ancient wisdom, 1 Samuel 16:7, for the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. And we understand that the word Lord in the ancient scriptures defines the love and law of God, infinite intelligence, spirit, and power. And we know that all that shows up in our life experiences is determined by what we feel is true in our heart. The heart being a symbol, the great Dr. Joseph Murphy would tell us, of the subconscious mind. We can change our thinking and change our life, but this process of change must include a change of heart. A change of heart. Does this sound simple? Well, it isn't. That which is held in our heart is not just what we think, but even more important, what we feel about what we think. And these are the results of reactions that we have had to our life experiences, some of which are so strongly held that they influence every aspect of how we live. And some have grown stronger over the years as the experiences that created them in the first place have been repeated. So let us think about how this process begins. We come into this life filled with wonder and curiosity. In truth, we are in the world but not of the world in those first stages of our development in life, because we have not felt the influence of the collective consciousness or race mind at this point in our life experience. Some children come into this life surrounded by loving parents and siblings where all their needs of a child are met. This environment creates feelings of security and confidence and peace, and these are held in the heart. In other words, the subconscious, and the child reacts to life based on these feelings. Now, some children come into this life surrounded by discord and dysfunction, anger and inharmony due to poverty, broken families, and or disease of both a mental or physical nature. The feelings associated with these conditions are also creating feelings, but most certainly of a negative nature, Now, there is no guarantee that the child with the early positive, confident feelings will continue to reinforce these thought patterns, and the child with the early negative, discordant feelings will continue to reinforce these thought patterns either. However, to change these deeper, unconscious patterns of belief, we must choose to discover within ourselves that something stronger within us. And we do this by consciously thinking of only the best and make the decision to make our best better and to understand why we can do this. You know, the great Dr. Norman Vincent Peale wrote since happiness and effectiveness depends upon the kinds of thoughts we think, it is absolutely impossible to be happy if we think unhappiness-producing thoughts. And what are some of the most common unhappiness-producing thoughts? Those thoughts are about comparisons and competition and lack and limitation, thinking that we don't have. As Jesus said, he who has much will have even more still, and he who has little may lose even the little that they have. So we must open our mind to the abundance of the universe and expect a more abundant life, a more abundant health, a more abundant joy, a more abundant peace. So since happiness and effectiveness, Dr. Peel tells us, depends upon the kinds of thoughts we think, it is absolutely impossible to be happy if we think unhappiness-producing thoughts. If we put into our mind thoughts of fear, we will get thoughts of fear out of our mind. As we fill our mind with resentment thoughts and resentment attitudes will emerge, and in neither case, of course, can we find happiness-inducing thoughts. He said, in my experience through many years in working with people, I have discovered that the most vital, creative, and positive thoughts are those stated in the Holy Bible. And those positive thoughts in the Holy Bible will give us the way. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you, the mastermind Jesus tells us. And Dr. Peel says this means simply that if we fill our mind with spiritual words so that they sink from our conscious mind to our subconscious mind, then we will condition our personality and with spiritual power and sensitivity that God is operating through us, working through us to bring forth to us all the good that we seek to enjoy. But we must be persistent, and we must be consistent. Persistent and consistent. Those are the two words that make spiritual power alive in our life. We can't realize spiritual power. We can't realize that dominion and authority that God has given to us by thinking of negative things, because God is the source of creation itself, so God is always seeking to create something better, something greater. So in order for us to get that something better, that something greater, then we must begin to think only the best and think that we can make our best better and begin to believe that we can make our best better. So let us begin to realize that everything that we desire to become aware of comes to us from the invisible intelligence that is the nature of God. Everything that mankind has ever invented, created, or made has come from this intelligence expressing through the mind of mankind. And this is why the great spiritual genius, the mastermind Jesus, declared, I and the Father are one. In other words, this infinite I is not separated and apart from the Father, which is spirit and mind and intelligence. We all know that we have spirit, which is personality, that we have a mind, which is how we think and how we imagine, and that we have intelligence to realize the consequences of what we think about and what we do. So God is the source of creation, but also God is the source of our supply of energy and vitality and health and creative ideas. The source of the sun, the air we breathe, the apple we eat, and the money that we possess. Everything comes from the invisible first. So it is easy for God to become happiness, joy, success, and wealth in our lives as it is for God to become a blade of grass. Every living thing is of the nature of God. And that nature is life, it's intelligence, it's power. We don't think about a blade of grass having intelligence, but we know that everything grows from intelligence. When that seed of grass hits that fertile soil, we know that the intelligence in the soil and the intelligence in the seed come together through intelligence and begin to make that blade of grass. So it's up to us to tell ourselves these things over and over and over and over again until they are held as the truth in our heart. As we will know when this is done, as we will think more and more of only the best, and we shall realize that our best is even better than ever before. That's why the mastermind Jesus could say with all sincerity and an absolute truth that these things I do and greater things still shall you do. And he knew that those greater things still were things that the people of his era hadn't even imagined yet. And we need to divorce ourselves from the things of the world. We need to always be firm in our conviction that it never matters what someone else says about us or even thinks about us, as what is most important is what we think about ourselves. And this is something that we need to remind ourselves of often. It has been said that the ones we love hurt us the most, but I would say the one that should love us the most, that is ourself, is the one who hurts us the most and the most often. And this is why so many people struggle in realizing their dreams and realizing their heart's desires. Self-depreciation is seldom recognized by the person, but as the great psychologist Carl Jung understood and discovered, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate, and this is the truth for all of us. You know, we're struggling with money, and we know we need to work on our prosperity consciousness. If we're struggling with health issues, then we need to work on our consciousness of health. If we're struggling with relationships, then we need to work on our idea, our beliefs about relationships. We know that it's always an inside job. Everything comes back to what it is that we believe. Remember Jesus' words, he who has much will have even greater still, and he who has little may lose even the little that he has. And I remember so vividly someone telling my father once that she would like to buy him for what he was worth and sell him for what he thought he was worth. That my father raised 12 children on a farm in Missouri without any form of public assistance whatsoever. We never saw a food stamp. We never saw a government cheese. We never saw any of that. So we know that it's the mind. Everything comes back to our mind. What is it that we believe about ourselves? What is it that we believe to be true about ourselves? What is it that we can accept for ourselves and expect it to come to us in the right and perfect way and in the right and perfect time? Our feelings associated with our little and large self-depreciations are always weaving their way through our mind and heart to be made manifest. Once again, the Buddha said, what we think we become. And so if we think that we are imperfect, if we think that there's something wrong with us, if we think that we can't even expect anything better, then that will become the truth about us. So that will become the truth about us. We must realize and bring into our mind the greater ideas about ourselves, a greater understanding, a greater everything. Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew 5:20 gives us insight into his thoughts regarding our relationship to life. He says, for I tell you, that's you and me, everyone. He's not just speaking to Christians or Catholics or Mormons. He's speaking to everyone, no matter what your religious attachments may be. This is the truth for everyone because he's speaking to a universal law, immutable, non-obstructed law, the law of life. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. And what do you mean by righteousness? He meant right thinking. As we realize that the word righteousness is right thinking, and that the scribes and Pharisees refers to those who follow religious dogma, we realize that Jesus is telling us to stop looking outside of ourselves to understand life and to understand our relationship to God, but look to God and God alone to guide us, to inform us, to give us the wisdom to make the right choices in our lives so that what we think we become, and when we think only the best, then what becomes? Our best becomes better. Our best becomes better, absolutely. And we want to believe this, and we want to accept this, and we want to know this, and it is the truth for us, whether we believe it or not. Let's go back to 1 Samuel 16:7. This is in the ancient wisdom, the whole Old Testament of the Holy Bible. It's also in the Torah. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. The Lord looks on the heart. So we must understand this word Lord. Lord is the love and the law of God, infinite intelligence, spirit, and power, weaving its way through our minds, our hearts, and our souls as good desires, as good intentions, as right thinking, as intelligent thinking, as right choices. But we must align our mind with it. We must let our mind be open. Because sometimes it will bring us into something so new and so different that it will amaze us. So that's why Jesus said, be in the world but not of the world. Don't concern yourself with what other people think. Don't concern yourself with other people's ideas about you. Don't concern yourself with other people's thoughts about you. Keep your mind stayed on God, on the good, and only the good things will happen to you. So we can change our thinking and change our life. And we can have a change of heart. A change of heart. We can begin to love this thing called life in a greater way, a more powerful way, by understanding how life works in a greater way. Done unto us as we believe, Jesus said. As we sow, so shall we reap, we hear. Keep your mind stayed on God, and all good things will be added unto you. He who has little will have even less, and he who has much will have even greater still. These are the words we want to wrap around our mind and keep ourselves attached to all day long as we enter into our daily activities of this thing called life. We want to know this, and we want to believe it, and we want to accept it, and we want to change our heart and change our thinking so that we can realize those good things that God has in store for us. So let us begin to realize that everything that we desire to become aware of comes to us from the invisible intelligence, that is the nature of God. We were created in the image likeness. The likeness is the nature of God, so we're intelligent. We know that. We can analyze, we can think, we can realize the consequences of our choices before we even make the choice. We know that everything that mankind has invented, created, or made has come from this intelligence expressing through the mind of mankind, for God is the source of creation itself. And this is why the great mastermind Jesus could declare, I and the Father are one. This I within you and me that no one else can say for us, that no one else can take our dominion and authority away unless we give it to them. This I is not separated and apart from the Father, which is spirit, mind, and intelligence, for God is the source, once again, of creation itself. But God is also the source of our supply of energy, vitality, health, and creative ideas. And so we know that God is everything, all in all. And that's the law of life that we must bring into our mind every day, that God is all in all. God is everything. Every good thing that we can imagine for ourselves comes from God. Every good thing. Physical, mental, spiritual, whatever it may be. If our mind is focused on comparisons and competition, get our mind off those things. We're not here to be anyone else. We're here to be this individual expression of life that we are, and to know that we are a part of God, intelligence, power, and spirit, so that we can begin to think only the best, think only the best, and realize that our best becomes better, our best becomes better. Keep your mind stayed on God, stayed on the good, Jesus said. Let's know it right now. We are the only person who can ever know us intimately, so what we desire, what we want to do, what appeals to us, what energizes us, what gives us a sense of enthusiasm for life, what gives us a sense of vitality is within our own mind. We are the one with whom we must live eternally. We are the one with whom we must live eternally. Our spirit. Our spirit was eternal because our spirit, being part of God, has an eternal life. Let's think about these things. Think about happiness. Think about joy. Think about prosperity. Think about health. Everybody desires to be healthy. Everybody desires to be happy. If they're not, then they have a mental problem. Everyone who strives towards greater happiness and health and prosperity and joy can have it. Each and every one of us, we can go around thinking as the world thinks, and we can be drunk on the collective ideas and false beliefs of the world, or we can open our mind to the wisdom, open our mind to God, open our mind to the intelligence, open our mind to the source of creation of all things. Let our mind be still and say, Father, I am here. Father, Spirit, Father, intelligence, Father, power, I am here to express this life in a greater way, in a healthier way, a happier way, a more prosperous way, a more successful way, a more giving and loving way. And let God's wisdom, God's intelligence, and God's power, God's vitality fill your mind, your heart, and your soul with an enthusiasm for life, with a love for life that will see you through whatever it is that may confront you in this world of affairs. So let's think only the best. Think towards God. Think towards the good. And we know that all the good things that come to us will make our best better. And so it is. Amen. And so